If you ever want to know how absolutely done the United States is with someone's nonsense, you don't look at press briefings. You look at how many floating cities of nuclear-powered death they just parked off their coast. Right now, the answer to that question in the Middle East is three. Three Nimitz and Ford-class supercarriers, over 100,000 tons of heavily armed American diplomacy each, crammed into the Persian Gulf region like bouncers waiting for someone to start a bar fight. The last time the United States Navy stacked three aircraft carriers, the year was 2003, and an Iraqi dictator was about to have a very, very bad decade. Today, the target is Iran. The stakes are a global naval blockade, and the U.S. military is quietly asking the universe if anyone else wants to find out why they don't have free healthcare. So, let's back up and explain why the Middle East is currently holding 41% of America's active naval firepower. For the last few months, the United States has been running something officially called Operation Epic Fury, which honestly sounds like a pre-workout powder, but is actually a systematic dismantling of Iran's maritime capabilities. The characters in this geopolitical drama are pretty familiar. On one side, you have Iran, a country that decided the best way to handle its regional frustrations was to aggressively mess with international shipping and toss sea mines around the Strait of Hormuz. They do what every financially broke country does when it runs out of good ideas. They try to strangle the global economy's favorite oil highway. On the other side, you have the United States, currently led by President Donald Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who looked at Iran's maritime rage bait and decided that a proportional response was for nerds. For months, the U.S. had two carriers doing the heavy lifting. You had the USS Abraham Lincoln chilling in the northern Arabian Sea. Then you had the USS Gerald R. Ford, operating in the Red Sea. And I need you to understand what the Ford has been going through. This massive ship has been at sea for over 300 days. It set the record for the longest U.S. carrier deployment since the Cold War. Her crew has been interdicting sanctioned tankers, conducting strikes, and literally dealing with a laundry room fire that forced them to pull into Croatia for a pit stop. The crew is tired. They probably want a decent cheeseburger. But instead, they've been enforcing a naval blockade of all maritime traffic entering and exiting Iranian ports. But two carriers just weren't enough. Iran thought they could play the long game. In early 2026, ceasefire negotiations in Islamabad were looking incredibly rocky. A 2-week pause in the U.S.-Israeli air campaign expired, and instead of taking the hint, Iran reportedly started trying to lay more mines in the Strait of Hormuz. They were basically handing the U.S. an excuse to go completely feral. The intelligence was clear. Iranian fast attack boats and mine layers were trying to slip out and recreate the 1980s tanker war. But it is 2026, and the Pentagon saw the whole thing developing. President Trump did not mince words. In a direct warning, he publicly stated he instructed the Navy to shoot and kill any Iranian vessels caught laying mines. When asked about a deadline for this conflict, he simply replied, "Don't rush." With talks completely stalled and Iran stubbornly bypassing the blockade, Washington stopped politely asking. They called up the USS George H.W. Bush. The Bush took the long way around the Cape of Good Hope, bypassing the contested Red Sea, and appeared in the Indian Ocean. On April 24, 2026, the U.S. Central Command tweeted the receipt. They dropped a post on X saying, and I quote, "For the first time in decades, 3 aircraft carriers are operating in the Middle East at the same time. Accompanied by their carrier air wings, the USS Abraham Lincoln, USS Gerald R. Ford, and USS George H.W. Bush include over 200 aircraft and 15,000 sailors and Marines." Let that scale sink in. 200 aircraft. If the combined air wings of these 3 carriers formed their own independent air force, it would instantly be one of the most lethal on the planet. And it's all parked off the coast of Iran. The strike groups include F-35 stealth fighters, F/A-18 Super Hornets, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare planes that can essentially blind an entire grid, and at least 9 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers bristling with the best missiles the defense budget can buy. With the Bush officially in the theater, Epic Fury shifted into high gear. This wasn't just a show of force. It was a live-fire demolition derby. By late April, U.S. forces had conducted more than 13,000 strikes against Iranian targets. They turned the airspace over Iranian military sites into a shooting gallery. The Iranian Navy learned that when an American destroyer locks onto you, your boat immediately transitions into a submarine. CENTCOM reported that U.S. forces have damaged or destroyed more than 155 Iranian vessels. Any speedboat with a dude holding an RPG, or ship thinking about dropping a sea mine, was instantly turned into a flying dumpster of shrapnel and regret. The blockade became an iron wall. The strategy is simple: strangle Iran while letting everyone else go about their business. The third carrier means the U.S. can conduct continuous, multi-axis air operations. They don't rest, they rotate. One flies combat patrols, one strikes, and the third acts as a heavily armed backup. They can hit targets thousands of kilometers inland without permission from foreign land bases. It is the ultimate flex of expeditionary warfare. The reality on the ground is incredibly grim for Tehran. Their naval assets are sitting at the bottom of the Persian Gulf, their proxy groups are getting hammered, and their economy is cut off from the sea. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth gave a press briefing amounting to a victory lap. Every ship that the U.S. believes meets our criteria, either Iranian ships or to and from Iranian ports, has been turned around, he stated, noting non-Iranian vessels were freely transiting. He even teased that another carrier might join the blockade in a few days, which at this point is just bullying. Iran tried claiming propaganda victories, with state media reporting they fired missiles at the USS Abraham Lincoln and forced it to retreat. The Pentagon responded saying, "We have literally no idea what you're talking about," confirming the ship was completely fine. The United States assembled an armada that rivals the military output of most continents to make sure Iran understands the ocean doesn't belong to them. They took 41% of their active naval warships, tossed them into the Middle East, and shut down a sovereign nation's maritime trade without breaking a sweat. As for the USS Gerald R. She's still out there. A 100,000-ton monument to American logistics, proving that while other countries might run out of money or morale, the U.S. Navy will just keep launching F-35s until you literally run out of boats.